This group started, Susan, when did it start? Like
3.5 years ago.
3.5 years ago. It's like, what are we gonna do? I don't know. Let's see what happens.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Ron. Really, really. Anyway, so 3.5 years ago, we said we're gonna do this Artists and Writers Coffee, a place to go have coffee and conversation. Had no idea what would happen. If it would last a month, I was like, yeah, 2-3 months, we'll see how it happens. And it seemed like people wanted some structure, and we were not going to structure it. And so I backed out of the group because I was like, oh, aren't you in charge? I went, no. So so 3.5 years later, short of a few times when we closed the building on them, this group has met in one form or another, probably over time, about 45, 50 people.
I've got 70 people on the email list, but a lot of them, I don't know who they are.
Yeah, well, some of them come,
Yeah,
and they don't come every week, and so it's just a place for, and I mean, y'all can say more about it than I can.
We're a resistance group. We resist structure.
Really is, and I appreciate that. So this morning, we are putting a little structure on it, bringing to this Artists and Writers conversation, the artist whose work is on the walls today and is going to, lead a conversation, which, like every week, may go any kind of direction that it goes with this group. And to get you started with who Dean is, I'm going to introduce Sarah Schroff, who is retired curator of Nasher.
The Nasher Museum.
The Nasher Museum at Duke University.
Yeah. So you want me to go now? Okay. So, well, hello, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So yeah, my whole career, I was a curator in an art museum. And, but I met this gentleman in New York 44 years ago, and we became fast friends, and he's a remarkable person, and I have always admired the photographs that he takes. And I'm just going to give you a little tiny little bio background for Dean. He was born in Brooklyn. He's a musician too. When he was in, how old were you when you did the St. Matthew's Passion? He was a member of the Collegiate Choral of New York City and Juilliard School of Music Chorus, and he did Bach's St. Matthew's Passion at Carnegie's Hall. He sang that. And then he went to Europe, and some of these are from his trip in France, and then Hamilton College, and then another year abroad, and then Pace University School of Law, and then Georgetown University. He has two law degrees, and he's had a very good law career. But when I met him, he was copying a Dutch 17th century picture at the Metropolitan Museum. And I saw this, man over there with this easel, and I don't think we had met before. I don't know if we had. I can't remember.
I can't remember the first time I met you, actually, but I remember several times at the beginning with our common group of scholars that mostly your group.
Yeah. So, because I was in graduate school, and anyway. So he's had a very lucrative business in a career in law. And then he's always painted. He's done, you've done sculpture, you've done printmaking, he's done a little bit of everything. But he's always had the camera with him. And I've always just thought that he was extremely talented. And I have a few in my house that I look at every day. And so I just thought, well, why don't we see if we can just, give him a show. So in Tryon, my new town. And so I approached Marianne and Nancy Holmes, and they said, sure, let's do it here. And so I went to Dean. Dean has two residences. He lives in DC and then also in Boca Raton. And so I went to Boca and went through all his photographs, thousands and thousands of photographs, and picked out from those thousands 150 roundabout. And then brought them here, and then studied them some more, and then in the end sort of narrowed it down to what would fit in this space. So there are 47 photographs in here, and the earliest dates from '67, maybe. And the last one is from like a year ago or so.
2022, I think.
Yeah, 2023. So it's a mixture. And they're not hung in chronological order. I decided to do, you know, the landscapes over there, and then portraits and other sort of almost portraits of places there, and then self-portrait, and then these are mostly the European older ones on this wall. So that's the show, and it's been really fun to do it and really get to know Dean's work, because, you know, I've seen it, but I never really studied it. And so now studying it, and then we got them all matted by Roger at the Frame House in Inman, and one of them, a couple of them fell off the wall while they're hanging here, and so I took them to Roger, and Roger, he rematted them and didn't charge us any.
Oh, that's so sweet.
He's so sweet, Roger, so sweet. So anyway, so that's the show. And I thought when Marianne and I were talking about it, I thought, well, you know, what struck me about what I've seen when I've been in the space and people have been in the space, it seems that people sort of relate to the places. Oh, I've been there, and, you know, oh yeah, I've been at that site in the Erie Canal, and you know, so I started thinking about site and the place you choose as an artist or writer, you know, the setting. So I thought maybe we could have an open discussion about the setting, and maybe start with Dean, and maybe you could pick one to talk about.
Okay. Thanks for everybody for coming, and thanks to TFAC and to Sarah curating and hosting the show, and it's been a really, you know, illuminating for me to see someone else's interests in particular photos and groupings of photos. And then when I was approached on the idea of talking about settings, you know, I've been thinking about it. You know, thinking about, you know, why we choose this, why I would choose to take photographs of places. What does the word setting mean to me? And you know, a couple of things came up to my mind. One is that a setting for writers would denote some sort of action, some sort of a narrative of a storyline or a subject line. I thought about settings in cinema, and then settings in painting, and settings in photographs. And so I started shooting photographs when I was 8 years old. I got a Brownie camera, and I got that out in California, and I remember that first trip. You know, I still have a picture from that first trip from a Brownie camera that I took of the Grand Canyon. But I grew up in Brooklyn, and then, you know, my parents, very loving people, bless their memory, got me my first really nice camera when I was 12 years old, and I think I'd already had a really strong reaction to growing up in New York City, and the place itself was mesmerizing to me. And so, you know, I had a sense of place, and from that time until this recent exploration, this recent journey that I'm on right now, and have been, say, for the last 10 years, since retiring from the federal government and coming back. I was caring for my parents down in Florida, and I got a car, and I would go up and down the East Seaboard and start discovering places that I'd never been to before. I started getting a sense of, you know, what is Georgia, and why is Georgia different from South Carolina, which is different from North Carolina. And I've been working, you know, I worked and lived in Washington DC for, near Virginia. Virginia is a very special place in the history of America. And I had this kind of, always had this kind of sense of, well, what is America? America, I mean, I think all American writers, painters, and artists of every stripe has that exploration of, that question, that sense of identity with a place. And so there's not really, what I'm doing now, there's nothing in the show since 2022. And just this last year, this year, 2025, I did a cross-country trip to replicate the early trip that I first got my camera and, back when I was 8 years old. I got a car and I went exploring, going and coming. And I'm in the midst right now of processing that information, those photographs. And prior to that, the year before, I was studying mosaics. I don't know if you've all met Mamie over here. Mary Angela is Sarah's sister. And yeah, that's Mary Angela over there. And she, she lives in Rome. She's been an expatriate for decades. And she runs an art gallery there, contemporary art. But she knows everything. She's like a mover and a shaker. Everywhere she goes, and so in Rome, she knows what's happening, and I had an interest. I had already started in Boca Raton, which is where I inherited my parents' house, which is why I go back and forth. I had an interest from the previous year. I had gone to Umbria and Tuscany with a mutual friend of ours, through whom I think I met Sarah, Sam Heath. And I became really, focused on ancient art forms, particularly mosaics. And Mary Angela knew a place in Rome where I could study. And so I spent 6 weeks in Rome with my cameras, of course, but also studying mosaics. And so I'm also kind of just right now in the process of digesting my visual response to Rome. And while I'm digesting my visual response to America, but the impetus all came from New York City. It's all started in New York City, and I'm also interested in people, so like, portraiture. And I was thinking about the idea of settings in portraiture. And so I asked myself the question, what are the settings of my impulses to take a picture? And so it's either the natural world, but it's not fashion photography. I don't create a setting. It's, what you see is what you get. And I think my exploration is, I believe that places have spirits, and part of the spirit is time, the spirit of time and the passage of time. And so buildings in particular, there's not a lot of them in this show. This show is actually, Sarah's, she chose every picture in this show for whatever reason she saw to put it with other pictures that she chose. So this is not my choice of this exhibit. This is Sarah's very interesting, in fact, from illuminating to me groupings of my photographs. But lately, in 2021, I would do portraits of buildings in places. I would be searching for the spirit of time in places that I'm learning about as I go, and this concept of discovering America and the history of America. And I would look for places with old courthouses and old, civic buildings and churches and places that have been there and how, were developed early on, just to get a sense of those places. And so my interest has to do with the spirit of a place in my time as I'm experiencing it. And so when I thought about the portraiture aspect, two photographers came to my mind. One in particular that right now on the cover of Vogue magazine is Annie Leibovitz's portrait of Timothy Chalamet. And it's called Timothy Chalamet's Universe. And she's set up this thing where it looks like he's standing on the globe. I mean, she created a setting for a universe. And then I also thought of another concept of setting. Again, another Vogue photographer, Richard Avedon, or a Forbes photographer. And the image that came to my mind is he did a portrait of Natasha Kinski with a nude, with a snake wrapped around her. And when the snake got to her face, kissed her with the tongue on the ear, and Richard Avedon caught that little moment. But that's a setting. I mean, so the concept, and so and also, it struck me that I'd be meeting a bunch of writers and other creative people, not necessarily photographers, that have a whole different approach to setting. A writer creates the setting, and so I just thought of mentioning those kind of like responses to my mind of the idea of setting in art. And last time through here, Sarah and I stopped at the Thomas Wolfe House in Asheville nearby. And Thomas, talk about settings and literature, he comes to mind, Thomas Wolfe does. His descriptions of places. And, the creation, and F. Scott Fitzgerald also, writing about the old Penn Station. Some of his descriptions just create a visual image in the mind's eye for a writer. So those are my, just free associations on the theme for today's discussion. And so I'm happy and interested and curious to hear your all's ideas on the notion of settings in art. And but just to close, Sarah asked me to pick out one image. So I'm going to pick out Sarah's favorite image in the show and Mary Angela's favorite image in the show. Happens to be the same one of Edward Weston's desk and his camera. But that is a setting right there. I didn't do this. I didn't set it up. It's not my setting, but it is a setting, and it's an interior space. And so my impulse was to get as close to the spirit of Edward Weston as I could through his personal effects. And that's what that setting is, and that's why I took that picture. So I hope that was a good enough picture to choose for the...
Perfect.
All right. And so I'm done. All right.
Well, and when I saw that picture the very first time, I said, "Oh, how'd you get in there?" And he said, "Oh, I just went to the house, and Carmel just knocked on the door, and the grandson
it's
was
still
there."
in the family. That place is still in the
family.
family.
Yeah.
And I was really fascinated by the story. I read this, historical journal by Clarice, whom he married. She was, he was in his, I don't know how old he was, but she was 19 years old. And so just that whole relationship fascinated me. And so and they lived in a place, and she talked about this place that they lived in together on Wildcat Hill off the coast in Carmel. And I said, I've got to see where that is. I've got, and I was out in California for another friend's painting show, and I just went up and down the coast just to check it out. And I went specifically to see this place, and his sons and his grandsons, and I met his great-grandson, whose portrait I think was also in the final selection, but he's not in here right now. It's just a place where it's still a studio. I was in his darkroom studio, I came up there was really nobody there, you know, it was just there, and I wasn't gonna impose on anybody, and then I saw what turned out to be Edward Weston's great-grandson taking out trash, and I just asked him about it, and he invited me in, and he also is a photographer, and so I had a nice little interaction with him, and I sent him a copy of the portrait that I made of him, and it's very low-key, you know, it's just, and I think the great-grandson's father still gives little workshops there, so it's an active photo place, so that's the answer to how I got in.
And $5.
Pardon?
And $5.
No, I didn't pay
$5.
I don't think they charge it. It is a favor. The grandson, but I've seen portraits, nudes of the 19-year-old Clarice hanging out of the window of this place, you know. So I was familiar with the place, and I just needed to see it for myself, and that's what that picture. For people to get out of the picture, but I stopped doing that. I used to do that all the time. I'm taking this picture, but no, this is life. The other thing that I talked about in terms of setting, I said it's either, and I never finished, it's either the natural world or ordinary life. Life as it's happening and unfolding before your eyes. And so sometimes it's like seeing around corners. You know a moment's about to happen, and you want to be ready for that moment. You're poised for it. Like in the Richard Avedon portrait, he had no idea the snake was going to come up and kiss him on the ear, but he knew something was going to happen, and he was ready for it. And so, yeah, it's like it's an interesting observation.
Well, to me, that's indications of good photography. It's when you have a good setting, you have good light, and if you're using color, good color. But here, 90% of your stuff is setting and light, and that can be very, very attractive. And I like to see in the setting something that I'm not going to expect versus.
Sort of like up there, the dark woods and forests, and then this brightly colored carousel.
Oh, yeah, that's
a surprise. It's really
that's
mysterious.
fantastic to me, because I've got all three. I got light, I've got a setting, and I got color.
Well, Cartier-Bresson, I saw an interview recently for the first time of Charlie Rose doing an interview of Cartier-Bresson, who's always been kind of like, you know, one of the first photographers that really, you know, riveted my attention. And he was a painter, and he was in the surrealist movement before, you know. But I think he described photography as drawing with light. Mm-hmm. It's not, you know, instant drawing with light. It's an instant drawing.
He had a great knack for setting and catching the interesting moment in the setting. He was something else, especially back then. Not much color.
I think he did some color, but not a lot.
Well, it wasn't that much around.
Yeah, he was like he had a little Leica and 35 millimeter film, and, you know, and that spirit of, like, you know, just getting right into moments as they're happening. And one of my favorite photographers.
Just thinking about that idea of moments, you know, it's like you blink and it's changed, and the camera blinks and there it is, you know, it's kept. And that's the thing, I guess, that to me, I don't know, my father liked taking pictures. He was not a photographer, but he had a friend who was an accomplished photographer, and he would give him his old cameras and say, well, let me show you, know, all this stuff. But so I grew up with my dad doing that sort of stuff. He didn't have his own darkroom or anything. He just sent stuff off to Jack Rabbit. But he was always looking at things, and I just and sometimes it was irritating because we just wanted to get on with the vacation. But, but he was capturing little moments here and there. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Are there any photographers here? You? That's it?
No, just the
Hold on. Okay, great. You know, I could see that. Yeah.
videotape.
Well, I'm thinking of what Francis was saying, well, two things. What you were talking about New York, because I grew up in New York as well. And as a child, my bedroom window, I was in Brooklyn, my bedroom window faced the Manhattan skyline. I never really thought about it artistically as a child, but I had that view every day. And it was something that really made an impact on me as a child, as I started realizing what I was looking at. But I had an experience like you in France, in this really old village where you couldn't even bring your car into the town. You had to park way down the mountain and walk all the way up the hill to get to this village, and it was very old and beautiful. But as we were walking up the hill, a big storm was coming from the other side, and it was pitch black. So the storm was amazing. You know, the darkness, as opposed to the light that we were in. It was so beautiful, and it was this moment that I will never, ever forget. You know, it's just this made this impact on me visually. So that was really cool.
Did you get caught in the storm?
No, we didn't, luckily. It kind of went the opposite way of where we were going.
Yeah, my husband
Yes, ma'am.
captured another view like that. We were in the Andes, believe it or not. We were in Colombia. And we were in a small town that had a monastery and a very, very beautiful building. But it was, we'd sort of driven through this stormy weather, and we looked at the monastery. We were looking at the monastery, and the sky was black behind it. The monastery itself was white, and it had a red door. And all of a sudden, the sun broke out and shone on that building, and it's just absolutely stunning view.
Well, here's a second story that convinces me that you have a strong visual sense.
Yeah.
You respond to moments visually.
Yes, yes.
But
yes.
what's your creative medium to be in this group?
Yeah.
What do? Do you make art?
Well, yeah, I'm not a photographer or an artist. But
You're right.
You're a writer, Francis.
I'm a writer, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Own
Sort
up to
of,
it.
sort of.
You worked as a curator also, haven't you?
Yes.
Worked as a curator too, so that's a visual, yeah.
She's also a ceramic artist.
You were going to say something.
I was just going to say, I've done the trips across country. I was out in front of the White House for 18 years working to get rid of nuclear weapons, and when I finally decided to stop doing that, I took a road trip that lasted for several months. And what I found was that I saw things that I wanted to capture, but by the time I was able to pull my car over or to convince the other people in the car with me.
Well, I was alone in my car for that very purpose. I mean, it was obviously, I'm going to see something, and I'm going to be in a place, and I'm going to just want to pull over. And that's a whole other way of just carrying your camera around, you know, which I also do in places that are new to me, just walking around. But yeah, you know, if you're traveling with other people, it's a little more difficult.
Yeah, I'm regretting the loss of a picture of a cactus. It stayed stuck in my
But it's in
mind
your
all
mind,
these years.
Go back.
Couldn't. That's what I thought, but it didn't work out that way.
But my wife and I took an excursion down the East Coast, trying to catch migratory birds to shoot. And she learned that her job was to sit over there and hold a 800 millimeter lens in her lap while I drove 5 miles an hour through a reserve. And a normal drive would take maybe half an hour, and it'd take 2.5 hours. I don't know if I could convince her to do another one. Oh yeah, that was the idea. Give me the camera. So,
Did you get good shots?
no, because I think I was late
Oh.
in the migratory scene, most of them gone. But there is, where was this? In Tampa. There is a reserve, a zoo, literally down in Tampa, in the heart of Tampa, that is probably got 500 giant alligators, all the birds in the world, and they're in a cage. I mean, it's, I forgot the name of it, but I took tons of stuff in there.
The Busch Gardens?
No.
No.
Uh-uh. Anyway, that's what you use a person in a car for, to hold your camera so that you can stop it. Get here.
I guess it's different too if you set out with the idea of, I want to take this kind of photo or a photo of this thing, rather than just walking around with your camera and saying, okay, what's today? Yeah.
You definitely need a purpose.
There's another photograph that I'm thinking of now that's hanging that I just want to bring people's attention to, because it's the closest thing to a setting that I've done, which is that picture of Jack, the little square picture of Jack Hatchett up there.
Right here?
Yeah.
Tom Hat.
So, and then there's the one next to it, which is similar, it's a similar type of picture, right? So, at a certain point, I think in the year 2000, I became interested in portraiture and studio lighting. And that is a setting. You're creating a setting, and you're creating so I'm looking for a setting either with a neutral background where you're just dealing with the psychology of the subject, or the one beneath it is, there's the two next to it are in other settings where there's an actual background. But those two with the white background have no background. And the only aspect of the setting is a blank background and the light source. And that's the setting. I thought just came to me, so I thought I'd share that.
Well, when I was in elementary school, I studied tree shape appreciation on my own. And from there, I did some writing and not much art. I don't even remember taking an art class. But then, 18 months ago was the first time my work was shown in public. And since then, there were 5 sales, so that's not terrible. But my work is more like outrageous than professional. And even though it's on photographic paper, it looks more like a painting. So my settings are mostly outdoors among trees, but then I just did one during the reception here, your reception, and it's not really outdoors, but a little bit outdoors, and I can show it to you later.
What do you shoot with? What do you shoot with?
Oh,
Your
no,
phone?
I don't even have a computer. I just use what I have, and I know what lighting it likes. I don't ever use zoom, I don't ever do close-up. I just know what my particular instrument can do, and I can find things that work with my instrument.
What is your instrument?
It's just just a cell phone.
A cell phone, right?
Hey.
But sometimes I do collages and other,
Do you have a picture that's showing now in one of the little galleries?
oh yeah, a few, yeah.
Yeah, I think I saw one yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yeah, of boats. Is that you that made that?
I'm Juniper.
Huh?
I'm Juniper.
Yeah, I'm just saying the subject of the picture
Uh-huh.
in one of these galleries was just these boats in a dock.
No.
Okay,
No.
but it's like what you're describing. It's like, it looks more like a painting than a photograph.
Yeah, right, that's what most of mine is. The exception is this one, I'll show you later, because it's not, it kind of looks like a cross between a photograph and a painting. But, yeah. But anyway, I'll just show it at a distance. This is it. And it's the room out there, but it has the outside too.
Can you pass it around?
You want to pass it around?
Yeah, please,
So
please.
you can guess, and I don't have any sophisticated things where you can superimpose something on something. I just what you see, what I get is what you see or whatever.
Why are you passing that around, man?
Now, that doesn't have a picture of any particular person.
Yeah.
It's just the
It's
whole.
the setting of
It's
the
the whole
setting is
scene,
great.
but it's not really the setting. I didn't take a picture, I took a reflection of.
The reflection.
Oh, it's back.
Very good.
Yeah.
It's called reflected reception.
Jupiter, you ran him off.
I know, yeah. But
Just get some more coffee.
But this
He just needs more coffee.
But this was his night, so that's why I brought
Yeah.
it. But I don't think he might be in the background.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
that's recent.
Yeah, that was,
So this is it. This
That's
is
it.
Jennifer.
It's over in this room right here.
That was the night you were here.
That's right next to, right here?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It's in that room.
did you shoot the reflection in the window? Is that how it
Yeah,
was done?
plus I got the outside.
Yeah.
So where my camera is where that building, and then the fence continues from the outside, and then the reflection of it all the way around, across to the left of the.
Is it superimposed though?
No, nothing, no, it's no
It's
trick.
a reflection.
Yeah,
Yeah.
almost flat, that window's out there.
Yeah, I can see that, but it's also, it's shooting in here.
Can you see my hat at the bottom right? It's above the building.
Is it in reverse?
No,
Because if I'm looking here,
No, it's the other room.
it's the other room.
oh, this is all reflective. This is
yeah,
all
yeah, it's all
reflective.
Reflective,
I gotcha.
except for the outside white building and then the fence and you see the tree on the upper left, there's a tree, that's outside.
Oh, right, here.
You see, that's
Here, yeah.
outside.
Yeah, cool. Cool. So it was created on the night of your reception.
Your reception, that's,
Wow. Lovely.
Oh, really?
Also, the conversation made me think of old things, that, because I'm always drawn to old things, you know, like if I go to Europe, the buildings are so beautiful and old, and to me, it has, like you were talking about, Dean, the spirit of a place. And I remember in New York, when I bought a house in New York that was built in the 1930s, and that was considered new in New York, but when I moved to Phoenix, I had a house that was built in the 1940s, and that was considered old. And I was in a historic neighborhood. So it's this concept of what is old and what is new, you know, and how we perceive all of that.
This reminds me of
Convey a setting, how do you choose a setting? It was a dark and stormy night, is it obvious? But, hey, that's good. I don't know. I was just.
Think about stage setting too, both those things.
How do you choose?
Yeah.
Well, I picked, I'm talking about going back and old things, both together. I was in Carcassonne, France, and I was taking French lessons. It's medieval. It's an old medieval village up on the hills and everything. And it's got history, because that's where the Catholics were. They had the Inquisition, things like that. The castle was built in 1100. It was partially destroyed. It was rebuilt in 1700, and I thought, well, 1700 is old enough for me. And
I'm American.
it was the exact replica of it.
Yeah.
And they've got this wonderful place. And I just thought, this is a great place to write about. And, okay, so I want to do a mystery. And I said, okay, so medieval times, I'm going to write around 1200. This is the time when the Pope called a crusade against, the only crusade against fellow Christians down in the South, and they kind of took over the South. And so I'm just saying, this is the perfect place. Okay, so who's my detective? And I thought, who would be Sherlock Holmes in the medieval time? An alchemist.
Right.
So I got an alchemist. Okay, who's going to tell the story? And then I just picked a plowman and everything. And then, so Watson is a plowman. And then I think Watson was married to Mary. So who's my Mary? Well, that's the alchemist's apprentice, kind of, and everything. And I put him there. And I said, oh, by the way, here I am in southern France. I'm in Carcassonne, and I'm going to write this setting. And guess what? I got to come back 2 or 3 times.
Oh, well.
And I did. I came back 2 or 3 times. It's fun.
And how many books you have on that
3.
setting? 3 books on that setting, yeah?
Yeah, I got 3 of them.
I find that I tend to choose not just a setting, but a time in my personal life when I am choosing. I've written a bunch of books, and when I moved away, I lived in Los Angeles for 27 years, and when I moved away from LA, I was feeling nostalgic for that time in my life. It wasn't necessarily the place, because it's still there, but in that time when I was there was important to me, so I set several of my books there. And then when I moved away from Tryon, I missed Tryon. So I created a fictional town that looks exactly like Tryon. And so now I wonder, I live in Phoenix now, and I wonder if when I move here permanently, will I be nostalgic for Phoenix? I don't know. But my books are set in a particular time, not just the place. So I guess my setting is frozen as opposed to, changing with history. I don't know. That's just how I do it.
Susan, is the setting of the place, is the story built around you leaving the place, or?
No, it takes place within the place. Yeah, all of my main characters are me, obviously, but even if it's a man, but yeah, I take my own personal history from that place and recreate it in my story. Yeah.
That's what Thomas Wolfe did with Look Homeward Angel.
Yeah, I'm from Asheville.
Yeah.
So there you go. Yeah, he's a hero, absolutely.
Do you think that perhaps you miss those places because you leave a little bit of yourself there?
I miss my time in those places. I was a model in the 80s in Los Angeles, and I ironically shot with a lot of big photographers while I was there as well. And it was my heyday as a young person, and I like to go back and revisit that and recreate it over and over with different people and different elements. But yeah, it was the time as much as the place, yeah, for me. And
Are
the
we
same
all going
with
to be
Tryon.
in the novel?
He's right there.
Yeah. Well, I'm making notes.
Chapter
Making notes,
4.
yeah,
I
yeah.
used to go around when I first started. I never drew or painted or anything until after law school. And when I started doing it, I would just go everywhere with a little sketchbook. And I would be constantly doing what you're doing, which is that how you...
Well, I just take notes.
Do you
so
do
I
it
can-
everywhere you go? Are you constantly
No,
writing?
well, not everywhere,
Okay.
but I do write. I was thinking that where setting plays for me, and it's sort of like what you're saying. I write poetry and I write prose, and the prose is typically memoir sorts of little short vignettes based on my childhood, and I have firmly impressed in my memory, my everything, the place where I grew up, just the backyard and the creek and the woods behind there that my friends and I all played in for, 15 years.
I don't like using the word because it has connotations for other people, but I use the word nostalgia a lot to describe my own impulse,
Yeah.
And I think that I don't know, sometimes I think that I'm always just trying to get back to my childhood.
Well, there's so much there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, I talk about soul mining, you just dig and dig and dig, and there's,
And we're
it's
getting-
your life. It's just all
And we're
there.
getting
Have you read
older,
Hemingway's
we want to get back to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's,
I know of it. I haven't read it, yeah.
Well, he talks about his time in Paris, and he would do what you're doing. He would go to a cafe and just spend the whole day there as a discipline, and something would come out of it. And I think the rest of his life, he followed that practice. I mean, he's very disciplined about
Who-
just
who
showing
is this?
himself wherever he was, and
Who are we talking about?
Ernest Hemingway.
Oh, Hemingway.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah.
I did what Susan did also. I wrote 2 fantasy novels, mysteries, and it's in Sourwood, North Carolina, which looks a lot like Tryon. But I thought by doing Tryon, by doing a portrait kind of Tryon, I'm also honoring the place I'm at. And I kind of wanted to do that. This is the place where I'm at, and I want to honor it.
Yeah, to me, it's a place that was meaningful to me.
Yes.
You know, because I've been a lot of places and nothing particularly wonderful or awful happened, but the moments in your life that are really impactful, I think I like to revisit
Yeah.
and recreate. I think that's what I'm searching for, that feeling that I had when I was there, I think.
Yeah, you can think of that as the spirit of the place. I mean,
Yes.
on whatever level you think of it, whether you think of it energetically or just metaphorically, you know, you've imparted some of you to that place, and you can go back there, and there you are. So,
Yeah.
But what about time travel?
Yeah.
The idea, the feeling of time travel.
Mhm.
So, this last 10 years that I've been doing what I was describing before, it started with music, really. It started with the Carter family. I needed to go investigate Appalachia. I needed to go investigate the musicians there. I needed to participate with the musicians there. And I just was exploring the area, which is not very much, in the mountains there, it's not very much changed from what it's ever been. And you get a sense that you're living in another time. And I think, in my photographs, I think the impulse is when I'm feeling that thing, you know, whether it's light creating it or just a feeling of the timelessness of place. I don't know, you know, time travel and nostalgia, you know.
Mhm. What's coming to my mind right now is an experience I had, this is a long time ago, and I wasn't thinking these kind of thoughts, but just in an old grist mill, a water dripping big wheel outside, and in there, standing with the old guy in overalls who's watching the corn go in between the stones, and he's taking little bits and saying, yep, that's pretty good, you know, just that. And it was like, it could have been 1850, you know, and it was whatever, 1980, you know, just such a whole
Sometimes reproach
shift.
myself for indulging too much in that, of not being in the moment of today, of not, you know, it's just like I'm always in some other time, some other space. But, you know, it just, time is timeless in all directions.
Looking at your photographs, you can't tell me what century they're in. They're timeless. I don't see, you know, a 1957 Chevrolet anywhere in here, or anything of that nature. They're timeless, and that's
Oh, and
to be
Sarah,
credited.
this is the first time that my first time showing photographs in a gallery. And so there are protocols that Sarah is an expert on. And so there were things in the titles of each thing is titled, the date, we had to put that, and I was resistant at first to put a date on it. But I think the date is informative. I kind of came around to liking the idea of saying, well, you know, it also adds to a sense of the time portrayed from 1967 to 2022. But yeah, it's like you know, that's the feeling that that's the feeling that I use the camera to feel. You know, I seek that feeling in the viewfinder. You know, I want to transcend the moment. I want to transcend time, and I think that's how I understand the journey that I'm on right now.
May I ask you, I noticed that you use different kinds of development. And could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes.
And did you do this
It evolved.
yourself?
That has evolved.
Did you do the developing
I did
yourself?
all the development of everything in this room, except for the picture of Mickey Mantle, which is the center baseball picture there that I took when, also in 1967, or that might have been 68, I can't recall. But that one was made, so Cibachromes, of which there are 2 others in the show that I did develop myself, but I went through, are made from color slides. So you have a positive color image. And back in the day, I was developing my own color slides. So, which you couldn't do Kodachrome, you couldn't get the chemicals for Kodachrome. And I shot with Ektachrome, Kodak Ektachrome, for which you could purchase the chemicals called an E4 kit, E4. And they're like 12 different baths that have to be meticulously measured for temperature and for the time that the film is in each bath. So it's a very complicated process, the Cibachromes process. And so the 2 that I did are the one of the carousel, and then the blue one over there when I first got the camera in 1967 in Brooklyn, New York. And but I took those pictures with the Ektachrome, processed the film myself back in the 60s, but it was in the 1990s when I was living in Washington, D.C., I was able to take a Cibachromes course at the Smithsonian Institution. And so it was in the Smithsonian darkroom that they had everything set up. They had the drum, they had the chemistry. I just brought my own paper in, and I have others from that time that I was developing Cibachromes. That was my way of developing color photography. So, but aside from that, most of the images in here are what are listed as silver gelatin prints. And film itself is sensitized to light with a gelatin of a silver salt that has a chemical reaction when light hits it. And the papers are treated that way and the film's treated that way. And I don't think I have, I lose track, but I don't think I have any of my original Brownie photographs in this show. But that's a 120 film, which I also was shooting Ektachrome for color. But I also started, at the age of 8 or 9, whenever I wanted to do it, I had a cousin who I'm still close to in Boca Raton, Jerry, who had a darkroom, and he taught me darkroom. And so I had these 120 film with the Kodak Brownie. I would develop those, and then I got an enlarger. My parents built me a darkroom in the basement of the house, and I was able to take the 120 black and white negatives, for which there were, at the time, Kodak made 3 different kinds of film, depending on how sensitive to light they were. And I still use, almost exclusively these days, and they still make Tri-X, which is a 400 ASA sensitivity. But back in the day, there was Plus X and there was Panatomic X. And they are less sensitive to light, but produce a greater amount of detail. So Panatomic X was like 25 ASA or 50 ASA, I can't recall. And then Plus X was 100 ASA, and Tri-X is 400 ASA, which has a kind of a grainier image, a grainier negative image on the film. So all the silver gelatin prints in here, with the exception of the self-portrait beneath there, which I'll talk about in 1 second, and there may be there's one other, there's that picture of the second picture in, the tiny, you could see by its size, 4 by 5 inches. With the exception of those 2 images, most of the rest were taken with a 35 millimeter camera, producing 35 millimeter black and white negatives, which you put into an enlarger, and you project down through the negative an image onto the treated paper, silver paper, in the darkroom. And so you're reversing the process. You turn the negative into a positive. And with an enlarger, and that's why you have different sizes. So lately, in my darkroom in Florida, the most recent 11 by 14s in this show are, you can see them by their size, the biggest ones. There's that one of the river in Soulsville, and then there is the Cohoes Falls, and then there's the one in between there, near, in Dickerson, Maryland, and the one of Edward Weston's desk. Those are the largest that I've been printing in Florida, and those are all recent prints. These two, the ones of Maryland and the street scene in New York City, are 11 by 14 prints that I made in 1980 when I sold a portfolio of 13 images to raise, which was hanging in a beautiful space, actually, in a restaurant in Greenwich Village. And with the proceeds of making those images and selling them, I bought my first Leica camera, which is portrayed in the top self-portrait. That's a little 35 millimeter camera. And then to finish this notion of the size of the negative, the two ones that I excluded to begin with are 4x5 contact sheets made with a Graflex. A Graflex is the old press photographer's camera. And the film size is 4 inches by 5 inches, the identical size of the prints. And the way those prints are made, you lay the negative, you don't use an enlarger, you're not projecting an image. You place the negative directly on top of the paper in the darkroom, light-sensitive paper, and you produce an image based on the light going through the negative directly onto the paper. You can manipulate light with an enlarger, what's called dodging and burning. You can intensify darks, and you can make lights lighter by dodging the light that goes down. And so for like a typical exposure of an enlargement print, it'll be anywhere from maybe 10 seconds, and sometimes you have a minute, depending on how much you shut down the lens. And it gives you time as you're making the print. You make a decision. You say, well, you want the image to come out, so you want the darks to be a little darker around the subject. And so there are ways to manipulate that. They're much more restricted when you're making a contact print. It's harder to dodge and burn in a little area. Richard Avedon used that type of camera, the 4x5 camera, but he used a 8x10 camera, so the negatives that he used were 8x10. And so Ansel Adams used an 8x10 camera. And that's my little Graflex over there, the 4x5 camera. And then in the corner of Edward Weston's desk is his Graflex that he used. You could see that in the image there. So that's the process. So then there's one other process that's in the show, and that is the modern process of shooting with either a digital camera or a phone, or in my case, I've digitized all of my slides, all color slides, and all of my black and white negatives onto computer files. And then once you have a computer file, you can shoot out and I only manipulate what came with the software on Windows, which permits you to make digital images through a computer printer, which is an ink printer, inks. And you all have ink printers in your home that are capable of producing in color. And we call those pigment prints because they're inks. They're created from inks rather than from light-sensitive paper. And those are listed, and you can see which ones they are because they're all the same the same dimensions, 4 by 6 inches. I made like a card catalog of every photograph through all the years, chronologically, printing I didn't print every one, but I printed the ones that I chose to print. And so they say the one of the Auto Milk Building in color, and the one beneath that of the hardware store in Titusville, Florida. And then this picture over here of the bottom of a lighthouse in Tybee Island near Savannah, Georgia. Those are all inkjet prints. Those are all pigment prints. And those are the only things that are represented in summary. You have the Cibachrome color prints, then you have the silver gelatin prints, and then you have the pigment prints. And I think I've covered all the bases.
What kind of paper did you print them on?
For the pigment prints? Canon, whatever, you know, I go to B&H Photo, and I buy it, and I have it delivered. So I think these are, I've experimented with every, pardon?
It looks like a satin paper.
Well, different surfaces. I experiment all the time. I mean, I do it in painting, and I do it in drawing, and I do it in everything I do. Everything is new, everything is an experiment, and I'm either using a different chemical, or a different paper, or a different camera. So when you talk about satin, there are different surfaces that reflect light differently. So you have basically a glossy, then you have matte finish, and then in between is satin or semi-gloss, which I associate the two together. So I'm not sure, I've used all those different papers, and I'm not sure which one specifically, but it looked like the one on the bottom there is a matte paper. And the shiniest ones are the Cibachromes. And I love the differences in way the light is reflected off the object itself. I think that is an organizing principle for me in my painting. And I paint in oils, and I experiment with how much medium to use with the oil paint. The medium itself produces a glossier surface, and I paint in layers. Thank you for that word. So yeah, so those are excellent questions, and I hope I answered them.
Thank you.
Do you ever paint from an image that you've taken with the camera?
Okay, I don't typically do that, nor do I typically create images out of my head. But I went through this period of like 5 years when I had a day job, and I was painting, I hired models. I was painting mostly the female form. And these models would permit me to photograph them so that when they're not there, I can use the image to inform something. But I don't really, it's not the same organic process for me. I don't like painting from photographs. And I think that I can always tell in a painting that's been made from a photograph. And I don't prefer it. I don't prefer, photorealism per se, Like some of the things that you're seeing now that are just so incredible, just the brushwork to be able to reproduce what a photograph does. But if I was interested in what a photograph does, I'd take a picture with my camera. Yeah.
Does it inspire you?
Say again?
Do photographs inspire you for painting, or?
Well,
is it just in your head?
Different media have different sources of inspiration for me. What I think that I've continuously sought to do in my painting has to do with creating the illusion of a sculptural three-dimensional form in a painting. And so I'm not interested in a flattened two-dimensionality in any of the drawings or painting. I'm always looking to see how the light goes around. And a photograph captures that only so much. Photographs are really two-dimensional. You don't get a real sense, as you can from a painting, that you're looking at something that comes, that has more dimension than just the two. But yes, it's an inspiration. You look at photographs inspire me. I get a feeling from photographs. I get a feeling from other people's photographs. And I think I've been guided in my own kind of like, figuring out what interests me by some particular, historic photographers whose work I was, fascinated by from the very first time I saw them. There was something magical that came off of a photograph. So I find photographs very inspiring, but not necessarily to a painting, not to do a painting from a photograph. Me personally, though, I have painter friends who, that's all they do. It's just not the way I like to work.
I was thinking when my husband and my 4 kids and I were traveling anywhere, I'd say to the kids, find something that's interesting. And they go, what? I said, that's for you to decide. And it always amazed me, the things that they would find. And I'd go, I didn't see that. And they did. And so that was really interesting. My husband then got me a digital camera. I don't remember if it was a Nikon or Fuji, whatever the heck. And when we traveled in Europe, I took pictures with that. And there were places where, like we were in Assateague Island in Virginia where the wild horses run. And we couldn't find them. They were not there. And then all of a sudden, 5 horses came across. And I happened to have the camera open and looking. And went, oh crap, I just caught like the back ends of them. But that was okay, I like that. And there's you probably know, but I can't remember. In Rome, along the river, there's this huge statue of a man. I don't know if it's Marco Polo or somebody. And I took that picture, and then I turned it into a painting, but I adjusted a lot of stuff in it, because I didn't like the way the photograph completed my painting, or vice versa. And all kinds of things, and it's interesting. I still send my kids all live in Maryland, Virginia, or Delaware, or whatever, and I send them copies of whatever I've done, and they either have a comment or they go, that's a good one, or something simple, like I sent one of red trees I did, calling it redwoods, and they go, where'd that come from? I said, out of my head. And they said, yeah, we can tell, but it looks good. Pretty clever.
They're your kids for sure.
Well, they're pretty clever themselves, so that's a good thing. But I don't remember that statue. I'll try and remember. If I find a picture, I'll see if I can get it to Sarah. I sold the painting anyway. It was like 40 by 60. It was a big painting. And I had terrible time with his hands. So I had a friend came over one day and said, oh, stop right there. I got to take your hands. What? And they were on his lap or something, but I couldn't seem to get, and there was a man, so the hands were a little thicker and bigger. And he said, why do you want my hands? I said, I need to paint your hands. Come on. So we went up to my studio and painted his hands. And he said, my hands will be permanently in a painting. I said, yeah, that's right. It was kind of silly. But there's a lot, I'm 84, so I've had a lot of time to see things and work with things. And all the different places I've been and the places I've seen, I've got a lot of albums of photographs I took, and I sometimes just go through and say, oh yeah, that was a good moment, And it's not the image so much as the fact that that moment meant something to me. But I still go back to when my kids would look out. One of the kids looked at, and he said, I like that tree. I went, which one? He goes, the one with the bark. Okay, Phil, you need a little more help here. He said, okay, there's 3 trees right in front. So I had my husband stop the car. There were 3 trees, a light one, a dark one, and a middle gray one. I want the middle one. He said, why? Because the bark is funky. It's got these shapes in it. I said, what shapes? So we went through a whole conversation. But I have to laugh because the kids' images and yours are so different. For my kids, they find the simplest thing more complicated. And for me, the more complicated things I tend to make more simple. So I find that kind of an interesting contrast.
I was given a digital camera, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, and I used it for about a month, and I said, I don't have the time for this. So I put it up in the closet, and I just took it out within the last year. And I took a course from Monica Stevenson down here. And it's been a real gift because I can go with the camera now and see things that I never saw before. I have 9 acres, and I can go around my 9 acres and see things that I would have never looked at before. You know, I have hummingbirds, I have bluebirds with babies, I have deer, I have mushrooms growing, and I don't have to go anywhere. I can wander around and just, it's been a real gift for me to observe things just where I am. And if I don't have anything to do, I'll throw my camera in my car, I'll go up to Asheville. I'll go around the River Arts District. You know, go to the train station. And it's just slowed what I'm doing down to where I am much more in my mind where I am right now. And the camera's been a real gift for doing that.
I think you hit the nail on the head. That's really what, that's the impetus to be in the moment. And it's, you know, the camera helps you be in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
slows you down and it helps you look at things that you wouldn't otherwise look at.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the same with writing though, really, if you think about it. You've chosen a moment to create in your story, and you just stay in that moment and just focus on that moment the whole time you're writing it. It's very similar.
Except your moment is longer.
Well, I don't know, maybe the description of it is longer, but not necessarily the moment itself. Yeah.
And it makes you realize what you're missing if you're not observant to what's going on.
I just think of the theater, you rehearse those moments over and over again. I mean, when I'm directing something, I'll say, I need an hour and a half for every minute of action on stage, an hour and a half of rehearsal time for every minute on stage, to build it, to layer it, to repeat it, to, you know, to make it real, to make it believable, and to allow it freedom. But to, yeah, it's interesting. Building, yeah.
That's also true in film as well. You know, when you're,
Gosh, it's
you know,
even lighter.
I did a documentary that wound up being about, I don't know, 40 minutes long, but I had about 120 hours.
Yeah.
You know, footage.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's interesting, if you're a visual person rather than an auditory, which I'm a visual person. I was in Virginia, driving along the Potomac River along Skyline, not Skyline, that's the other long, whatever, up towards Washington's house. And I stopped at this little pull-off, and there was this tree, and it was just kind of leaning into the water. And I went, well, that's really interesting. So I stopped and looked at the tree for a while, and I thought, it's reaching out. It's got a life of its own. It's got a spirit. It's just doing its thing. And I didn't have my camera, so I just had a piece of paper and I sketched it on a piece of paper. And then I wrote a poem about it when I got home. And it was just such an interesting, and the more I looked, the more I saw in the tree. And then I looked down below the tree, and guess what was below the tree? A rabbit. And I didn't scare it away, because I wasn't making any noise. And I went, well, look at that. So, it was one of those moments, you know, where you remember specific things, and I remember that tree just hovering over the water. It was an old tree.
I was in Carcassonne. I was sitting in the square where the fountain was, and I decided to sketch it in words.
Ah.
So I was just describing everything around me, all the people around me, and things like that. And I was describing the square. And there's a statue up there on the roof, and it's a saint or something like that. I never saw him. Been there 20 times. I never saw him.
Yeah.
But there is a statue up there on the roof, looking over the square.
Yeah.
I never saw it.
Well, you did find one.
Yeah, I did. And then I had to go find out who the statue was.
Yeah, of course.
The other thing about carrying a camera around with you is, for me, I'm always looking forward. I'm looking forward to the next place that interests me, or the next scene or something, instead of at my age, I have a problem with everything that's behind me. And I really like the part about having the camera and looking forward to things, looking forward in my life.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
I like that.
Very good.
Yeah.
I don't think it's an accident that a lot of creative people create their best work when they're older. I mean, if you look around, well, this whole town is, you know, a lot of older people. I think it's because of, you just have more to work with. You've got more scenes behind you that you can reproduce or try to recreate, or, yeah, I think that gives, I think we're better, frankly, but, yeah.
We can vote on it.
When I have these moments of awareness of something that I have not been aware of, look at all the stuff I've missed all these years. I mean, what do we know?
Oh, my God.
Sorry.
That's for next week. No, we won't be here next week.
Next.
Sorry.
No, that's
It's a movie.
wonderful.
That's a good
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
That was incredible.
And being capable of being our age and being open still to ideas like that.
Yes.
I was gonna say, just the idea that, yeah,
And to
what
be
do we know,
surprised,
really? Well,
and to surprise yourself that,
10
how did I
fingers.
not know
Because
that?
I was
Yeah.
smart,
yeah.
a lot.
Everybody told me I was.
There's,
All right, I
There's-
knew a lot.
well, we can talk about wisdom and we can talk about smart, you know, and I'd choose wisdom all the time, so.
And you're pretty smart.
Well, it's all right. I have a point about it.
This discussion's making me think about, so I'm an art historian, so I studied paintings and drawings and sculpture, and my field's Spanish, 17th century. And so I know the Baroque period really well, and so I've looked at art my whole life, right? And, but I've taken a drawing class recently, and about 12 weeks of drawing class, and I realized while, you know, sort of halfway through, that I had never really seen how light hits things. My whole life I studied, and it was like, you know, it was like this huge sort of revelation. Like, how could I have not ever seen it like that? You know, it's just amazing. You know, it just, yeah.
Yeah, until you're called on to actually do it. I mean, I assume that's how it came. It's
Yeah,
like,
it came.
okay, to get
Yeah.
this shape to
Yeah.
look this way,
Yeah.
you've got to get the light and the shading and all that kind of stuff. And
Exactly.
and to-
You
yeah.
must have felt it, if you didn't see it, when you looked at those still lives in
Yeah.
your field of expertise.
Yeah.
It's all about the way the light falls on the
Well,
thing.
of course,
Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, I guess it's because I hadn't done it with my own hand before, you know? And it was doing it with your own hand made the process of seeing different, you know? And when I'm looking around at, you know, how I chose things for this show, I mean, I was mostly interested in angle of view for him. You know, he has very interesting angles for every image, you know, and I think that was one of the things that drew me to choose which ones that are in the show out of the hundreds and hundreds that I looked at. And it doesn't, you know, that's what curating is you try and figure out how you can make a story, really, of the images, you know, and for me it was the thing that we're doing, talking about setting, is so interesting because, I mean, I thought about the settings, of course, but what the reaction to this show, so we had, so like, for example, when we had one of the Tryon Concert Association concerts, and one of the players, one of the musicians came down and he went right straight to that bridge over there in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and he started talking about how that meant so much to him because he traveled there and he'd go past there for, I don't know, going to places, and that was an image that and so, I mean, and there were lots of instances of that, you know, when people were in here they were talking about, oh, I've been there. And it's not something, you know, it's not something I even thought about before, you know.
Can I give you an example of that?
Yes.
Last week when we had our meeting, I walked out here and I started there, and the first picture was of the Shenango River. And one of the first places I ever worked was at Shenango Import Motors in upstate New York.
Wait, what town?
Huh?
What town was that in?
It was in Utica.
Utica, New York. I went to college up in Hamilton.
And you
College.
went to college in Hamilton,
Yeah.
and my brother was the head of the biology department at Hamilton College. I lived in New Hartford.
New Hartford.
Yeah,
New-
so
where
just
does it
look,
say up there?
just
New
walking
Hampshire?
out and look at that picture
Wow.
brought back so many things to me, you know?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right near, the town is called, I used to call it Soulsville, but they pronounce it Solsville. And I studied piano with somebody from Utica at Hamilton College, and he introduced me to lunch one day at the Solsville Hotel. And I still go up to that area, and I love that area.
Yeah.
So are you from up there, or you just worked up there for a bit?
No, I lived there, I lived up in that area twice, 2 different parts of my
I
life.
love that area.
Yes, it's beautiful, for about 8 months of the year.
I also like, you know, the snow months. I mean, I was there. You know,
I was
yeah.
too.
Well, speaking of how
Yep.
photographs affect us, there was, I'd just like to share this with you, and I might cry, because I spent a lot of time in here and went around and looked at every one during the opening. And one that really hit me, I think it's over here somewhere, was a picture of an empty restaurant in Athens, Greece.
That's that
Oh,
one
it's
over
over
there,
there.
yeah.
And there was a waiter with a towel or something. And I looked at that, and I'm similar to Ken, I don't look back, I basically go forward. And it struck me really hard in my heart, because when I was just graduated high school, I was told that my mother was leaving and going to move to Athens, and that I was not going to college, and that I was basically homeless. So that was, and it was just a horrible, horrible time. And this was taken in '81, and of course my mother was there, because she lived there for about 15 years. And it just was kind of remembering that, you know, trying to deal with all those emotions of what do I do and where do I go and how do I live and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, I wonder if my mother ever went to that restaurant.
No, yeah,
But, you know,
yeah,
so it was just
yeah.
kind of, I didn't need that memory. But there's one other thing I want to say to you, and this really bothers me, really.
Sure. I'll help you with it.
That lighthouse, why didn't you shoot the top of it?
I spent a lot of time with that lighthouse, and I had with me also my I didn't talk about this in the process, but there are a couple of images in the show that are panoramic, that I have, and that's, I guess, the size of the 120 film. I think that's a contact print as well. So I got around the same time that I started to shoot with Experiment. I haven't done it in a while. I want to get back to it. The studio lighting with a monotonous background. I also got the one on top of it is also, but that's from I scanned the panoramic negative for the one on top. That one's a contact print over there. But the same time that I got my camera, which was a Hasselblad square format camera and studio lights, I also got this medium format panoramic camera. and I was interested in vertical panoramas. It's not in the show, but I photographed that lighthouse and other lighthouses with the top. But it's not in that photograph, and Sarah selected that photograph. And I think the reason that I don't know, what goes into Sarah's mind or other people's minds, but I think, that's a composition, you have a vertical, and you have that fence. So it was more just the forms that Sarah chose it for, rather than a portrait of the lighthouse itself. Though, I find the bottom of the lighthouse to be a fascinating architectural structure.
Yeah.
Isn't there a little bit of a mystery to you?
Yeah.
And that's also what you could bring out in the photograph if you don't show everything.
When I have one of my, it's a funny comments I got. I got another comment on angles from somebody, particularly. So one of my favorite photographs around the South here. I would go and I would find these just out of nowhere. In a car, I would stop and take a picture of one of those churches, those churches that were built in the early 1800s or something, and the structure itself and the light on it, and it was just perfect. And I took a picture of it, and everything is in there but the pinnacle of the angle on top. And one of my friends looked at that and was like you, wanted to see the top of that picture. It is what it is.
I want to comment on the one with the light coming down. That,
To the church.
Yeah.
Is that one of those contact prints? Was that a contact print? No?
That is not. That is with a 35mm negative. That was the year that I did it. During college, did a semester in London first. I was an English major. And the second semester, it was when art history opened up to me, which is where I met my friend Sam, through whom I met Sarah, through whom I met Mary Angela. So second semester was in Florence, Italy, studying art history in Florence, Italy. And, I'd go around, and I went to Padua because of the Giotto frescoes in Padua. And this is a basilica of St. Anthony in Padua. Do you go to Padua ever?
Very rarely, but it's one of Italy's most beautiful cities.
And in front of that church, so I went there to see this famous equestrian bronze Gattamelata of Donatello's, which is in front of this church. And so I went into the church, and there that was. And so you had to take that picture.
Yeah. Speaking of a moment, how long did it last?
That's the other thing, light goes and...
Yeah, it's gone. I wondered if you had intensified the light in that when you printed it, or, no?
I rarely play with it. I'm kind of like, I want to see exactly what the negative did. What did the light do?
That's really cool.
And I don't want to mess with it too much. Though I will accentuate, a figure in an image as I do in painting. Chiaroscuro, shadow and light. And so, but typically, I don't make many adjustments. I don't do a lot of dodging and burning, hardly at all, really.
Okay.
And sometimes you get a negative that the picture is worth printing, even though it's not, perfect. It's like there are so many aspects to what goes into a picture. A lot of it's become automatic, but when you're shooting these images, you're setting the camera for it, and how you set the camera informs how much detail, how much depth of field, and you're shooting for a particular light. So, you're making a choice. Like Ansel Adams had the zone system, or it was all about this. Ansel Adams was all about this. Was seeing in natural light, seeing what the photograph could look like, and creating it in the way he actually set his camera. So I do a lot of that. I do that automatically. I automatically say, well, gee, I know what I know where the middle tones are. I know what interests me about this scene, and I will set my camera for the light that I am seeking. And therefore, the negative is going to be the record of that. And I want to sustain the record of that when I print it. And you know, and you can only print, I mean, I'm not one of these printers that, you know, lives in the darkroom. I'm a printer that, gee, I'd like to see that image, and I'll go into the darkroom and print it. I've printed such a small percentage of all the negatives that I have, but the computer has made it easier. So since I digitized all these things one time, it's much easier. You press a button and boom, the thing comes out. And you know, and I had a big conversation with my friend, and it's still an ongoing conversation. Our friend Sam is very partisan, pro silver salt images, and so this other medium feels like an inauthentic way of shooting or seeing. I accept the limitations of every medium. Every medium has its limitations. And I appreciate what this new technology affords us. But I also much prefer to work in the darkroom with light itself, you know, rather than this newfangled technology of computers and, you know.
Does that make you a purist?
No.
No?
I don't know, I tell you what, I aspire to purity. but I never get there. so it's like, but
It's
yes,
too late for most of us.
Well, speaking of time,
Yes.
it's noon and we generally end at noon. So I'm
Okay.
going to say,
Lunchtime.
anybody that wants to hang around, and you included,
Yeah.
do so, but I'm going to go
Okay.
ahead and,
Are you the sponsor of this group?
no, I'm the denier of being responsible for this group.
I come every week to this as well?
No, I don't, because, I've done.
You abandoned ship
I
shortly after
did,
it
because
started.
people said, what are we doing, Mary Ann? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm out of here. This is on you guys.
I have a card for everybody.
Oh, how lovely.
Oh, and if
Merry
you.
Christmas.
But I always read the
About
notes. David sends out extensive
Thanks for
notes.
you and
I
Janet.
take notes and I just send out as part of an email to the group saying, okay, this, if you missed it, this is what we talked about. If you were here and your brain is like mine, you probably forgot. You can go through it again. And so I just type up the notes and send it out. And it's, it kind of keeps us going.
Well, it's
Yeah.
great that you had, it's a wonderful group.